You're listening to the CIP podcast, the Study Abroadcast, Season 5, Episode 2. I'm your host, Andrew. I am currently a peer helper at CIP, and I studied abroad in Sweden last fall, so during the fall 23 semester at Linköping University. In this show, we explore the world of study abroad, offering advice, insights, and travel stories, bridging perspectives and cultures along the way. So in this episode, I'll be speaking about the France Field School with a University of Guelph student who participated last summer, Chantel, as well as the instructor for this field school, Dr. Margot Irvine. So first things first, would you guys both like to give a brief introduction and tell us about your relationship to the France Field School? Dr. Irvine, let's start with you.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. So thanks very much for having us here. So I've been teaching at the University of Guelph now since 2004, so for quite a long time. And I teach French and European studies. But this was actually the first field school that I got to coordinate, and I really loved the experience of doing it. I'd been hoping to take students abroad for quite a long time, and just because of different family circumstances and things like that, I was never able to before. But it was a really lovely experience, and so I'll be doing it again in spring 2025.
Okay, awesome. Would you be able to give us just like a brief overview of what the France Field School entails?
Sure, yeah. So we are based in Paris. So although it's called the France Field School, it's very Paris-centric. And the theme of the course is artists' studios and writers' house museums. So we visited about a dozen different museums that related to the course theme. And we had a bunch of different optional visits and things as well that we did. So yeah, I can get into more detail maybe later, but does that give a bit of an idea? Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Chantel, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience at the France Field School?
All right, sounds good. Yeah, my name is Chantel, and I'm a third-year arts and science student here at Guelph, and I'm minoring in history and zoology. And I came across the France Field School when looking for abroad opportunities, and I just loved the idea of going for the summer because it meant I could still be like in the Guelph community during the year.
That's definitely a benefit of the field school program. So with that being said, Dr. Irvine, would you be able to describe to us what exactly a field school is and maybe some of the benefits or how it would differ from a regular exchange program?
Yeah, so a field school is an intensive course that students do, in the field, so abroad. And so ours was a 3-week course, but we did have some meetings beforehand as well. We did some meetings over Zoom, 4 meetings beforehand and 2 after as well. And so it differs from a regular study abroad program. I mean, there's a lot of different kinds of study abroad programs, but it's not a full semester abroad or a full year abroad, and you're not studying at a different university. You're with a University of Guelph faculty member, and you're with other students from the University of Guelph as well. So it's nice from a social perspective, I guess, because you get to meet more students from the U of G, and the expectations, I think, are pretty consistent with what you would expect from a third-year course at the U of G, because it's conceived of and taught to U of G students.
Yeah, great. Okay, so with the France Field School, people who are probably deciding on whether they want to do the France Field School or not are wondering what a day would be like, or like what you're going to be doing on a daily basis. So Chantel, could you walk us through of what a typical day would be like while participating in the France Field School?
Yeah, for sure. So each day was slightly different, but it usually consisted of like a planned excursion, such as like an art gallery or studio. And then as a group, we would go through the gallery location and kind of spend time analyzing it, and Dr. Irvine would explain it and relate to course content. And there's also free time to explore Paris as well and like seek out activities that were outside the mandatory excursions, which I also think is very important.
Yeah, so what would you say the balance would be between the school and then the free time? Or like what were kind of the hours for that?
Yeah, I would say like majority of the day was a planned excursion, maybe like 2 to 4 hours, and then we would also discuss it after and before, and then there was free time. It kind of varied from day to day.
Nice. So then as far as like meals and eating and that sort of thing, are you like going out and buying your own groceries and cooking it, or are you like going out for every meal with your group, or is it more of just like a everyone for themselves sort of deal?
Yeah, we had a little bit of both. I think that we did have some like lunches we planned all together, but then we would also kind of go our separate ways and explore what we were each interested in, because it all kind of varied. But yeah, some eating out, some we did some groceries too as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so there's a little bit, it's not like eating out every single time, so you're not like completely breaking the bank in that regard, I suppose.
Yeah, we tried to go to like the bakeries as well and try to like go do those sorts of things to kind of
Yeah.
experience it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, nice. Thank you. So Dr. Irvine, you touched on the coursework a little bit before, but would you be able to go a little bit deeper into what students should expect as far as assignments and workload for this course?
Yeah, definitely. So I really wanted to make sure that the students weren't doing work while we were in Paris, because it seems to me like 3 weeks in Paris isn't even really enough. There's so much to do and so much to explore in Paris. So I really wanted the students to make the most of the time that we were there. So this is why we had the 4 pre-departure courses and then 2 after, and most of the assignments were due after we got back. But there was some work that the students had to do on the ground. There was one assignment that I gave where students had to go and observe the same location on 3 different occasions. So they could choose any location in Paris, but just go and observe everything that they could see around them and note that. And some students did really nice creative ways of presenting what they'd observed in the spot that they picked. So there's a sort of a gathering of information, a bit of doing research while we were there, taking it all in, but the work itself was handed in after we got back.
Okay, yeah, that is good to know because I kind of thought it was, oh, you're spending like there's designated school hours where you're going to be like working on your assignments and then you're like handing them in at the same time. But that sounds really nice going to France and experiencing everything there and then kind of analyzing that once you come home.
Yeah, and I think there's some value to sort of thinking about it afterwards and letting it sink in a little bit and then submitting things too, because there's just so much coming at you when you're abroad. So
Right,
good.
yeah.
Mhm.
So with the assignments, what was it? What was like a highlight assignment or like something that you really got a lot out of, Chantel?
Yeah, so specifically as Dr. Irvine was saying, was the exhausting a place I really enjoyed because it added that like experiential element where we had to go to a location a few times and kind of write down our observations. And I think that was really interesting because there's not a lot of opportunities that you have to just sit down and just like observe your surroundings with no distractions. So yeah, I really enjoyed that one. Stood out. And it's a nice keepsake to look back on later on.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Okay, so Dr. Irvine, what kind of application process should students expect if they are hoping to go to the France Field School? Like, is it pretty competitive? Are there like extensive essays or like a questionnaire or something that people fill out before attending the France Field School?
Yeah, it's just the basic application to study abroad through CIP. And we'll be having an information night about this again on November 5th. But CIP, I know, runs a lot of sessions too to help prepare students for the application process. And then after I got the applications, it was quite competitive. There were quite a number of students who were interested. So I held interviews with everybody, and that was how we came down to the final list, was a combination of the application package and the interview itself. And in the interviews, I was looking for people who were interested in studying abroad as part of a group. That was something that was kind of important to me because group travel is pretty different than traveling by yourself. And, so I wanted to make sure that students kind of understood what they were getting into with traveling with a group and that they were interested in that and they were looking to meet other people and to make friends on the course. That was kind of the main thing that I was trying to suss out with the interviews, I guess.
Yeah, no, for sure. So with the application, is there any preference for like program or if like I'm in a certain program, should I like not even bother applying for the France Field School or is it pretty open for programs, Dr. Irvine?
Yeah, good question. I'd say it's pretty open, and we did have quite a variety, and that was actually really nice. It really enriched the group, I think. There are quite a number of students who are interested in coming from French studies, and I think that that's really great, of course, and very, as a French prof, I have to encourage that. It's a really great experience to have that kind of linguistic immersion in France as well. And it's possible to get a credit in French for a French course if you do all the work in French for the course, or you could just get the credit in English and as a humanities credit if you don't. So I wouldn't say that there's a preference and that there's any kind of required background, but it's a course that suits students from French studies, from studio art and art history and history in particular really well. But it could be open. I think anybody would get something out of it, no matter what.
Okay, yeah. So like, let's say I'm like a microbiology student, I wouldn't be rejected immediately because I'm in microbiology.
Absolutely not. No, if you're
Okay.
interested in learning about art in Paris and you're enthusiastic about that, then that sounds great.
Okay, perfect. So
Yeah.
on the note of speaking French and like kind of the culture, Chantel, did you speak French when you left for the field school?
So, no, I did not speak French when I went for the field school.
Okay, so with that being said, did the language barrier of obviously all the locals speaking French and French being the dominant language in France, did that kind of hinder your enjoyment or experience of the field school?
So, I didn't find that the language barrier was an issue. I know that Dr. Ren also gave us like the regular conversation that we would need in one of our lessons. That was before our departure, so that was really helpful. And additionally, I feel like a lot of people there do speak English, specifically in Paris, which helped out in times of communication. But I also wasn't worried at all since I know I had Dr. Irvine and other French speakers if I was like in a situation where I needed a French speaker.
Okay, nice. Yeah, so not really an issue if you don't speak French.
No, I didn't find it to be an issue.
Good to hear. So, for a question for both of you, we'll start with Dr. Irvine, but what was your favorite aspect of the France Field School?
Hmm. Yeah, great question. So I've got a lot of really nice memories when I look back on it. I think some of my favorite things was so I've been going to France a lot. I've spent a lot of sabbatical times in Paris, and it's a city I know very, very well. But what I really loved was when students taught me something new that I didn't know. Sometimes it was, I remember Chantal actually seeing you as well. It's making me think of this, but you had found out about the fresh orange juice that's available in the grocery stores, and it was delicious and cheap and really cool. And I'd never tried it myself, and so just hearing that from the students I just loved it when they would come back to me with stories of things that they discovered on their own, and seeing the students become really independent and exploring the cities on their own too. Some of the students hadn't traveled very much before coming to the France Field School, but Paris is a city where you can learn to navigate yourself quite well. The metro system is great. Students after a while started to rent the public bikes and take those around the city because there are a lot of bike routes now, bike lanes and things too in Paris. So I just thought that was wonderful, and it made me really proud of the group to see how they were managing to navigate the city. If I can say one more thing too, I feel like I've got a lot to say on this answer, but I also really enjoyed the residence where we stayed. We stayed in a place called Canada House, which is on the campus of Cité Universitaire, which is an international university campus. So there are different buildings, different residences from different countries around the world. I thought that was a really nice community, actually. I really enjoyed where we stayed. The facility is really nice. The staff were great. And you kind of feel that a little bit of a connection to Canada. So it's a bit comforting, I think, as well, to be in a Canadian residence, even though you're abroad.
Yeah, so with the residence, was it like you're staying in dorms, or is it more of like private individual kind of things where you can like spend more time with yourself, or are you spending a lot of time with the group, or like you're like living with the group?
Yeah, so we lived all together. I stayed there as well. I had a little studio apartment, and the students had
Mm.
shared rooms. And there's a shared kitchen as well, a communal kitchen for all the students too. And there was laundry facilities in the building too. So it is a typical sort of university residence, I would say, but in a really lovely setting with a beautiful sort of park-like setting and a really lovely park across from where we were staying too.
Okay, nice. Yeah, that's good to know. Chantel, what was your favorite aspect of the France Field School?
Yeah, there is so many things, but I think one thing I thought was really special is kind of learning about the city from the perspective of someone who is kind of like living there. I think when you visit a place for a few days as a tourist, you don't really get to know the city kind of in a more like intimate way. But I was able to learn about Paris and like the artists and the history associated with it while like feeling the movement of the city in a way that like you don't really understand if you're just there for a little tourist moment. Just like little things like the orange juice you mentioned, just like little things you find out when you're living there for a longer period of time. Yeah.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, was there, did you know anybody when you were going on this France Field School? Like, did you have any other friends that were going, or was everyone pretty much strangers?
Everyone was pretty much new to me. I know like we had each other's contact information, so
Mm.
I had like an idea of who they'd be, but I didn't know anyone and it was completely fine. It was okay going in.
Yeah, so can you speak a little bit about like any friendships you made during the France Field School? Like did they last, or was it just kind of you had this really great time with people and then you went your separate ways? What was kind of
Yeah.
the deal with that?
Yeah, I'm still in contact with some people on the trip. I think that's just like such a unique memory that we have this like collective understanding that it was just like a great time together. I think like obviously we all have different majors, as you said, and maybe we don't see each other as much. But I do think that we still keep in contact enough to, think about the time we had and how fun it was. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great answer. Okay, so for both of you again, do you have any advice for those who may be considering field school or are on the fence? Let's start with you, Dr. Irvine.
Yeah, I don't have too much to say except that I would just really encourage students to apply for them and to take advantage of the opportunity. And I think there are a number that CIP is offering next year, and they all look really interesting. So I would say, attend a lot of information sessions, apply to all of them, rank them however you see it fit for yourself, following your interests. But it's just a fantastic opportunity to be able to go abroad and to earn a credit at the same time for the work and everything. So, it's great.
One other thing, a question I have for you, Dr. Irvine, is what should students expect when they're looking at finances for how much this field school will cost?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have the numbers in front of me or anything, but surprisingly for Paris, it's actually fairly inexpensive, and it's partly so you have to pay for your flight over, but the residence is very inexpensive, and that's the other big item for the budget wise. So that's just a nice perk about Paris. You'd never think that you could go to Paris and stay cheaply, but in fact, Canada House is run by a charitable foundation based out of Quebec, and they've got a mandate to provide housing to Canadian students so that they can study in Paris. And so it's just wonderful that we can sort of take advantage of that, and it does keep the cost down. And public transit in Paris is also really economical, and that's the other sort of big expense. We took one train one time where we went out of the city when we went to Giverny, to Monet's studio in Giverny and Garden, but otherwise we pretty much just took the metro and buses to get around the city, and that really kept our costs down too.
Okay, nice. So it's really not, you're looking for ways to like kind of cut corners with finances. You're not really splurging on a lot of things in the field
No,
school.
yeah, we were really trying to keep it reasonable for students. I don't know if Chantal wants to speak more to that, but that was the goal that I had anyway. I wanted to make it accessible to students for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Chantal, so with that, do you have anything to add about the expenses?
Yeah, I think the actual course itself was like a fixed price, so that was, up to you paying that up front. But in terms of like food and excursions, that's really up to all your saving and like what you want to budget out for the trip. So I think it was very reasonable in that way, because if you wanted to go do some special excursion and spend the money on it, you could, but you also don't have to.
Okay, yeah, great. So back to the original question, Chantal, do you have any advice for those who may be considering the France Field School, or anything you wish you knew before going?
Yeah, again, they'll definitely say apply, but I'd also say like make some friends on the trip. I'm very glad that we were like a cohesive group and we all had like the same goal in mind of like getting to know each other and being friends. And it is a unique experience where you can go back to campus and we all are from the same university. And yeah, make friends in Paris too, meet locals. That's also a good thing about the dorm situation, is we were in a situation where there were other international students that you could meet, and yeah, it was very good.
Okay, awesome. So as we're coming to a close, do either of you have any closing remarks or anything that we haven't quite covered yet today that you think people who are considering the France Field School should know? Dr. Irvine?
No, I can't think of anything else that we haven't covered, really. Yeah, no, I guess we did also do a lot of sort of optional excursions, in addition to the ones that I consider to be really central to the course theme. Things like going thrifting, or we visited a bakery at one point and had a demonstration on how to make croissants and baguettes and things too, which was a lot of fun. So there are those options. We did some walking tours as well, and I'd actually like to do more walking tours, I think, in the one coming up this spring, just because the different neighborhoods in Paris are also interesting to learn about too. But I think otherwise we've covered most of the things about the school. So thanks very much, Andrew. It's been fun.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Chantel, do you have any closing remarks or things that you'd like to speak about?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, maybe don't let your major restrict you into like not going into the topic, because I'm doing zoology and history. It's not really related to art history, but I still got a lot out of it, even though it wasn't something I typically study. So I definitely recommend it, even if you aren't in that field of study. Yeah, thank you for having us.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Thank you both you guys for coming. So yeah, that is all for today's episode of the Study Abroadcast. Don't forget to explore your own study abroad opportunities on the CIP website, which is ulguelph.ca/CIP, or you can follow us on Instagram at CIP_Guelph. Thanks for listening, and thanks once again to both Chantel and Dr. Irvine for speaking with us and sharing their advice, insights, and travel stories. And you can stay tuned for our next episode, where we are going to unpack the study abroad experience even further. Thank you.